parted, for though we have parted, I love you and I always will. And while I'm so lonely, I'm writing you only to see if you care for me still.
Hello everybody! Welcome once again to another edition of Quick Trivia with Mike. It's that weekly game show right here on Channel 955 where we test your knowledge of historical facts. Some of them are a little bit older in nature, some of them are very contemporary, but hopefully they're all a lot of fun. I am your host and the Quizmaster, Mike Brever. Sit back, relax. Let's spend the next half hour together, shall we? Hopefully we'll all have a lot of fun. You know how the game show works by now. It begins by going over 3 questions that I posed last week, and we see just who it is that was able to give us the correct answers. Then I give you 3 new questions for the coming week. A couple of new things we've been doing lately, though, that I think are a lot of fun, and we're going to continue them today. First of all, our very, very good friend Jim Fry was kind enough to share with us a handout of some test and quiz answers from an 8th grade class in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. These answers were edited by Bill Lawrence, their teacher for space and time, just so that it wouldn't be too lengthy. We've had a lot of fun with them. We're going to take a look at a couple more today. Remember, test answers from 8th graders in an actual class in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Here's a question about Jamestown. Jamestown burned in 1699 and Williamsburg had to take over. Jamestown had been a nice place to live for honest people. Oh, it had a few robbers, but not enough to mention. It is in Pennsylvania. Everything you need to know about Jamestown. Right there in a nutshell. We don't like to drag things out. Get right to the heart of it. Here's one about Admiral Farragut. Admiral Farragut was the man that got the Mississippi River. He shouted, "Damn the torpedoes! Fuel speed ahead!" Farragut's ship sank, but he didn't. We're not really sure what happened to him afterwards, but after he damned the torpedoes and went full speed ahead, his ship sank, but he didn't. And there you have it. It's the update on Admiral Farragut. Our quiz answers for the week, as edited by Bill Lawrence from an actual 8th grade class in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. We're actually just going to ignore that phone. We're gonna make believe it didn't even ring. Probably not important. What's more important than being here with you right now? We also have a new addition to this week's show that I thought I'd share with you. I think it'd be a little bit of fun. We have a couple of people here, and maybe this will be a weekly edition now. A couple of people here are celebrating birthdays this week. I thought I'd shout them out so that in case you run into them in the corridors or, throughout the building, wish them a happy birthday. 2 of them in particular. First of all, Bill Fantry. Bill Fantry on this week is celebrating the 57th anniversary of his 29th birthday. Bob Anthony is our second birthday boy this week. Bob Anthony is celebrating the 67th anniversary of his 29th birthday. Congratulations to Bill and Bob. Keep watching. Your birthday week, maybe you will be highlighted in a shout out as well. Let's get right into our questions from last week, shall we? I talked a little bit about Captain James Cook, that naval officer from England at the time of discovery of the British Empire, sailing around the world and finding new lands and claiming them for England. Born on November 7th, 1728, he died on February 14th, 1779 at the age of 50. James Cook, as you know, is credited with being one of the first to land in Australia. He also was the first European to land in Hawaii, and coincidentally in Hawaii is where he met his demise. He and his men were in the process of kidnapping the hereditary king of the Hawaiian Islands, and the islanders rose up and Captain Cook was killed. One of the big things which you don't really hear very much about with Captain Cook is that he was very concerned about the health and well-being of his sailors. So much so that he monitored their diet, and his sailors were very much safeguarded from, if you will, the plague of that time, scurvy. Scurvy, you know, comes to back in those days to sailors who were out on the seas for a long time. They didn't have access to fruit, and so their bodies became deficient of certain vitamins. Scurvy is prevented by making sure you have a well-balanced diet. You know, fruit, vegetables, all the rest of that. Well, he was very concerned about the safety of his men, and he made sure they had a well-balanced diet, and so scurvy was not an issue. I asked you last week, and I gave you 3 options. In addition to the fruit and vegetables that he saw to it that his men had, he served a favorite meal as well, a meat. It happened to have been a fowl. And I asked you if it was chicken, if it was turkey, or if it was parrots. Which was it that Captain James Cook liked to feed his sailors? The answer? It was parrot. Specifically, he loved to serve it to his men in parrot pie. Kind of a staple. You know, birds were a lot easier to keep on a ship than cattle or pigs or something like that. And it did provide the protein that the sailors were looking for. Parrot pie was a favorite meal of Captain James Cook, and he served it to his men on a regular basis. Question number 2. We talked extensively about the history of polio, that plague of the 1950s, the heart-wrenching pictures of children in iron lungs helping them breathe. Just a devastating disease that really shook the world. But when they finally figured out a vaccine, Jonas Salk, the discoverer of the vaccine, within the first 3 months of discovering it, 443,000 children were vaccinated as America geared up to fight this epidemic. And it really was successful. Cases of polio now are extremely rare. I think there's really only 3 countries in the world where polio is still somewhat prevalent, and they're all in the Middle East. So Jonas Salk discovering the vaccine really put an end to it. I did ask you, however, that probably the most famous victim of polio, FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Contemporary doctors now believe that he may not have been suffering from polio at all. It might have been some other debilitating disease. And I asked you, what was it? The answer is that immunological pediatrician Armand Goldman of the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston now says that FDR's symptoms were much more consistent with Guillain-Barré syndrome. Guillain-Barré is a virus that strikes your nervous system, and it too can cause paralysis. Coincidentally, I had a cousin who suffered from Guillain-Barré, and he actually never did walk again. He was in a wheelchair, stricken with it in his late 50s, early 60s, I forget which it was, but he never walked again. Polio paralyzes limbs unevenly and doesn't move up the body, as happened with FDR. In addition, the intense pain that FDR felt when people touched his paralyzed legs wasn't commonly seen in people with polio. In addition, highly unlikely for polio to strike adults well into adulthood. If you remember, FDR was in his 20s when it occurred. And I'm sorry, he was 39. FDR was 39 when it occurred in him. So Guillain-Barré is the nervous disorder which begins with a virus. That was the answer we were looking for. That was question number 2. Question number 3, we talked about the Chernobyl disaster, the dead zone around it. How many people died in the initial explosion. The fact that it was actually started as a test. The technicians at Chernobyl were actually creating a devastating disaster so that they could practice stopping it. Well, as it turns out, they weren't able to stop it. And it became the most devastating nuclear accident in history. I pointed out to you that although there are animals still alive in the nuclear zone, humans are forbidden from living there. Humans do, in fact, live in the nuclear zone. Not many, but some. The degree of radiation within humans is high. But some humans do live there. Some of them live there specifically to care for the animals that live there. The Chernobyl nuclear zone has really become a wildlife preserve because it's uninhibited or uninhabited by humans, and therefore it's uninhibited on the animals. They're able to thrive there as a result of it. The initial cleanup from the nuclear accident is scheduled to be complete in 2065. 2065. And if you remember, the initial accident occurred on April 26, 1986. So we are already 35 years into this, and we have another 40 years or so to go. I asked you, when do experts believe the nuclear zone will be free for human habitation? When will it be free of nuclear habitation? And remember, the nuclear zone is a 1,000 square mile area around Chernobyl called the exclusion zone. I asked you, when will it be safe for human habitation? The answer? 20,000 years. 20,000 years from the initial accident is when Chernobyl is estimated to be available for human habitation. There you have it, folks. Those are, in fact, the answers to last week's questions. Who was the winner? The winner was Alex Hill. Alex Hill called in with his answers. Actually, he emailed, which is one of the ways to get your answers to me. And he got them to me by Monday at noon. Alex correctly identified Guillain-Barré syndrome, and he also correctly identified 20,000 years until the exclusion zone around Chernobyl is safe for human habitation. He did not get that parrots were the number one choice for James Cook. However, Alex Hill had the most answers correct and is our winner for this week. Congratulations, Alex, and welcome once again to the winner zone. We're now going to take a brief intermission. When we come back, I'm going to give you the new questions for this coming week. Go get yourself a donut, a cup of coffee, and we'll be right back.
want you to hold me. Oh, hold me closer. Closer. Closer.
If I hold you any closer, I'll be in back of you.
Oh, why can't we break away from all this? Just you and I, and lodge with my fleas in the hills. I mean, flee to my lodge in the hills. And you can say it was a real love match. We married for money. Eh, my shrinking, Violet? Say, it wouldn't hurt you to shrink 30 or 40 pounds.
Oh, you impudent head.
Why, you're one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen, and that's not saying much for you.
Why don't you marry me?
Why, marry you?
You take me and I'll take a vacation. I'll need a vacation if we're going to get married.
That you're the man I've been dreaming of.
What do you eat before you go to bed?
Yes, I don't think I've ever seen 4 more beautiful eyes in my life. Well, 3 anyway.
I could dance with you till the cows come home.
Yeah.
On second thought, I'd rather dance with the cows till you come home.
Huh.
I mean your eyes, your eyes. They shine like the pants of a blue suede suit.
What? I welcome you with open arms.
Is that so? How late do you stay open?
Why, I've never been so insulted in my life.
Well, it's early yet.
He's had a change of heart.
A lot of good that'll do him. He's still got the same face.
I hadn't intended to make a speech at all, but you certainly succeeded.
This lady is my wife. You should be ashamed.
If this lady is your wife, you should be ashamed.
She looks as healthy as any woman I've ever met.
You don't look as though you ever met a healthy woman.
What? Haven't we seen each other somewhere before? I don't think so. I'm not sure I'm seeing you now. It must be something I ate.
Remember, you're fighting for this woman's honor, which is probably more than she ever did.
Why don't you go home to your wife? I'll tell you what, I'll go home to your wife, and outside of the improvements, you'll never know the difference.
Can you sleep on your stomach with such big buttons on your pajamas?
So, you didn't think I was a real detective, eh?
If you're a detective, I'm a monkey's uncle.
Keep your family out of this.
Oh, please.
$9.40? This is an outrage. If I were you, I wouldn't pay it.
Well, that covers a lot of ground. Say, you cover a lot of ground yourself. You better beat it. I hear they're going to tear you down and put up an office building where you're standing.
I thought this cigar was in my other suit.
I wish you were in your other suit, and your other suit was being pressed. No, mangled.
Did anyone ever tell you you look like the Prince of Wales? I don't mean the present Prince of Wales, one of the old Wales. And believe me, when I say Wales, I mean Wales. I know a whale when I see one.
You guys go to your rooms. I'll be down shortly.
That reminds me, I must get my watch fixed. Crooks, the crooks, they're escaping. Follow me, men. Never mind the men, just the women.
Oh, Captain.
Hey. Yes, sir?
Oh, no, sir. This is special for Mr. Helton, sir.
You see this? Come back in a half hour and I'll give you another look at it.
Can you tell me the price of this bed?
$8,000.
Why, that's preposterous. I can get the same bed anywhere in town for $25.
Yes, but not with me in it.
A lady's diamond earring has been lost. It looks exactly like this. In fact, this is it.
I've been sitting right here since 7 o'clock.
Yes, with your back to me. When I invite a woman to dinner, I expect her to look at my face. That's the price she has to pay.
What experience have you had in a department store?
I was a shoplifter for 3 years.
Oh, Captain! Good gracious! Oh, man.
If you weren't smaller than me, I'd flog the daylights out of you.
But I'm bigger than you.
Well, that's another reason.
Are you sure you have everything, Otis?
I've never had any complaints yet. Are you a man or a mouse? You put a piece of cheese down there and you'll find out.
One of them goes around with a black mustache. So do I. If I had my choice, I'd go around with a little blonde.
I can see you right now in the kitchen, bending over a hot stove. But I can't see the stove.
This magnificent chest. This magnificent chest.
I'm the plumber. I'm just hanging around in case something goes wrong with our pipes. That's the first time I've used that joke in 20 years.
Is it true you're getting a divorce as soon as your husband recovers his eyesight? Is it true you wash your hair in clam broth? Is it true you used to dance in a flea circus?
This is outrageous.
No thanks. Bad luck. 3 on a midget.
We took some pictures of the native girls, but they weren't developed. But we're going back again in a couple of weeks.
Why, look at that face. Oh, look at that face. I'll go and pick up a couple of the boys. And I'll stay here and pick up a couple of names. Women, this is no time for women. On to the bar.
We have Hunga Dunga, Hunga Dunga, Hunga Dunga, and McCormick.
You've left out a Hunga Dunga. You left out the main one, too.
You might have some tomato juice, orange juice, grape juice, pineapple juice.
Hey, turn off the juice before I get electrocuted.
Why, a 4-year-old child could understand this report. Run out and find me a 4-year-old child. I can't make head or tail out of it.
What do you think of that slide?
Well, I think he was safe at second, but it was very close. You know Conductor Hennessy, don't you?
Inspector.
Inspector yourself.
But look at me. I've worked myself up from nothing to a state of extreme poverty. Now, what do you say?
What are you doing with that cigar in your mouth?
Why, do you know another way to smoke it? What do you think of at night when you go to bed, you beast?
Well, I'll tell you, my dear.
I'd rather not discuss it any further. Remember, there are children present. I'll see you at the theater tonight. I'll hold your seat till you get there. After you get there, you're on your own. And don't point that beard at me. It might go off.
Oh, throw me the lifesaver. Oh, Professor Wagstaff. Please, hurry, Professor.
Anything further, Father? Anything further, Father? That can't be right. Isn't it anything farther further? Faravelli, you've got the brain of a 4-year-old boy, and I bet he was glad to get rid of it.
You're awfully shy for a lawyer.
You bet I'm shy. I'm a shyster lawyer.
I'm going there soon, you know.
Is that so? Where are you going?
Uruguay.
Well, you go Uruguay, and I'll go mine. Well, all the jokes can't be good. You've got to expect that once in a while. Fancy seeing you here. Well, it's a small world after all.
Boogie, boogie, boogie.
You mind if I don't smoke? One morning, I shot an elephant in my pajamas. How he got in my pajamas, I don't know.
Welcome back to the second half of our show. We've already identified Alex Hill as our champion and gone through the 3 questions from last week. Let's move on and get into the 3 new questions. We're going to take a look at one of my favorite topics. We've done this many times in the past, but we're going to look at it one more time. We're going to take a look at World War II. World War II, you know, began with the Japanese invasion of Manchuria in 1931. You know, here in America, we tend to think that World War II started on December 7th, 1941. But again, it actually started with the Japanese invasion of Manchuria in 1931. There are also people who are Eurocentric who think that World War II started with the German invasion of Poland in September of 1939. So depending upon your perspective, World War II started at various dates. Probably one of the greatest tragedies in the history of humans here on Earth. It's estimated that a total of 75 million people died in World War II. 6 million of those people died in concentration camps. 6 million people died in concentration camps. We had a question about that several weeks ago. If we took a minute to remember everybody who died in concentration camps, how long would it take till we could list all of the victims? And the answer was over 11 years it would take if we had a minute of solitude for everyone who died in a concentration camp. But in addition to that, it's estimated that 26 million Russians died in World War II as well. You know, the siege of Stalingrad was just really a devastating time for Russia. As many civilians, actually more civilians than soldiers, died in that conflict. In the United States, our involvement was from 1941, December 7th, 1941, until August of 1945, the dropping of the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which finally brought peace to World War II and the surrender of Japan. We lost 291,557 soldiers in World War II. We also lost 113,842 other casualties as a result. We lost totally 405,399 individuals in World War II. We had another 670,846 that were wounded, for a total casualty list of 1,076,000 1,245 individuals. In addition to that, another 72,491 are deemed missing and presumed dead. So almost 1.2 million Americans lost their lives as a result of World War II. There is an anomaly about World War II and deaths affecting Americans. On May 5th, 1945, 6 people, a pregnant woman and 5 Sunday school children, became the only deaths of Americans on the continental United States. Now, continental United States, I mean the 48 states on the continental United States, excluding Hawaii and Alaska. A pregnant woman and 5 Sunday school children became the only deaths on the continental United States on May 5th, 1945. That's just about the time of Germany's surrender, but it was another 3 months yet until Japan would surrender. These are the only known deaths in the continental United States as a result of enemy action. These deaths were as the result of enemy action during World War II, and the only civilian casualties on American soil after the United States entered the war. My question to you, what was it that killed this pregnant woman and 5 Sunday school children on May 5th, 1945, in which they became the only civilian casualties on American soil after the U.S. entry into the war? What was it that killed this woman and 5 children on May 5th, 1945? We're going to continue on with history and trivia that occurred during this week. On May 6, 1937, the Hindenburg disaster took place. The famous quote, "Oh, the humanity," from news reporter Herbert Morrison became famous as he broadcast the actual destruction of the Hindenburg in a ball of flame as it attempted to land in Lakehurst, New Jersey. The exact cause of the fire has never been determined. You know, when we hear the report by Herbert Morrison now, we see newsreel footage at the same time. Those were actually 2 separate recordings. This was not actually videotaped with a voiceover at that time. Herbert Morrison was doing a radio broadcast, and someone else was there filming, and those 2 were put together to come up with a medium that viewers today are much more comfortable looking at. This disaster of the Hindenburg actually marked the end of the airship era. Ironically, if you see the video footage of it and you see the fireball that occurred and how fast it went up, it's hard to imagine, but survivors of the Hindenburg disaster actually outnumber the victims. The disaster's 36 deaths included 13 passengers, 22 crew members, and 1 worker on the ground who was attempting to moor the ship at the time of the explosion. 62 people survived. So of the 97 people on board, 62 survived. Hard to believe when you see it. In addition to that, as I explained, the Hindenburg was not broadcast live. According to U.S. law, the Hindenburg was prevented from using helium instead of hydrogen. Hydrogen, of course, is much more flammable. If they had used helium, it would not probably have resulted in the devastation that it did. The reason is that the United States had a monopoly on the world supply of helium and feared that other countries might use the gas for military purposes, and as a result of that, they banned its export. And that's why hydrogen was used instead of helium. Actually, later in the 1930s, it was the United States was on the verge of lifting that ban. But when Germany annexed Austria in 1938, the Secretary of the Interior, Harold Ickes, refused to ink the final contract. There actually was a specially designed lightweight piano. You know, what kept it aloft was the hydrogen, and so they couldn't have any unnecessary weight. So a special piano was invented to place on the Hindenburg to entertain the residents. The very first flight of the Hindenburg was actually a Nazi propaganda flight. Flew around the entire country of Germany to show everybody just how successful they were in doing these things. And also, ironically, dozens of letters that were carried aboard the Hindenburg were actually delivered weeks after the explosion. Approximately 17,000 pieces, because they were stored in a special place, which was flame-proof. My question to you, now that you know all these facts about the Hindenburg, there was a room on the Hindenburg for passengers' use that was pressurized to prevent any hydrogen from entering. A steward admitted passengers and crew through a double-door airlock to get into this special room on the Hindenburg. My question to you, what was the purpose of that room on the Hindenburg? What was this special pressurized room that had double airlock doors that you had to go through in order to access? That is question number 2. Question number 3. We're going to go into television history. You know I love to do this. We're going to take a look today at The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson. It aired from October 1st, 1962 to May 22nd, 1992. You know The Tonight Show still airs, but we're looking specifically at the Johnny Carson era on The Tonight Show. In 2002, The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson was ranked number 12 on TV Guide's greatest TV shows of all time. You know, it aired after the news, Monday through Friday, for over 30 years. Hollywood guests and authors and celebrities would come on, politicians, you know, Johnny would interview them. Lots of humor and hilarity would ensue. People really had a good time. It became a fixture in late night television. My own father just loved the show. Couldn't go to bed until after he watched Johnny, as he says. And I think that really was true of a lot of people in America. He really loved to access Hollywood stars for his show. However, it is often said that his least favorite actor on the show was Bob Hope. Best known as a wonderful comedian, a USO entertainer, really a legacy of 20th century entertainment. The reason that Johnny didn't care for Bob being on his show is that Bob would never engage in conversation. He went on and he was literally doing his monologue from his shows that he would do. And, you know, Johnny really enjoyed the banter, the give and take. You know, one of the things about Johnny Carson is that he never met with his guests before he went on air. They'd show up, they'd be in their dressing rooms, he'd be in his. When they came out, the conversation started. And it just went from there. It was all off the cuff, and it was just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful entertainment. Even much more popular, you know, there are people today who will tell you that talk shows owe a huge debt of gratitude to Johnny Carson. If it weren't for him, the television venue would have just disappeared. But people love it today. People like Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas, Dick Cavett, they all got their start because of the way that Johnny Carson handled late night. Now, you know that preceding Johnny, there was Jack Parr. He did the Tonight Show before him. you know, there have been people that have hosted after him. But again, the heyday of The Tonight Show was, in fact, Johnny Carson. My question to you, again, focusing on this week in history. On May 3rd, 1966, Johnny Carson and Eva Gabor did something that saved the legacy of a toy that has become one of the most popular toys in American history. Johnny and Eva actually played this game on The Tonight Show. Prior to that, sales of the toy were so low that it was actually being considered to be pulled from the market. My question to you, May 3rd, 1966. What did Johnny Carson and Eva Gabor play on The Tonight Show that saved the game and rewrote the toy industry, the game industry, to this day? There you have it, folks. Those are our 3 questions for the week. You know how to play by now. Get your answers to me by noon on Monday. You can email me at mbrever@eastcastleplace.com. Call me at 963-8425 and leave a message on my answering machine. Write down your answers. Put them on the conference table in my office, or you can put them in my mailbox behind the reception desk on the first floor. As always, I'd really like to thank the management of Channel 955, our president, Tyler Gudex, our executive producer, Laura Wengler, my producer and cameraman, Scott McFerrin, and of course, as always, my artistic director, Cooper Ledvina. Scott and Cooper really are the behind-the-scenes people, and really, they actually contribute a lot of the questions that we have as well. So, there you have it. If 2 or more of you get the same number of answers correct, there's a tiebreaker. Listen to the music at the beginning of the show and at the end of the show. Same song, identify the mystery music, and that is the tiebreaker. That's our show for this week, folks. I am the host and your quizmaster, Mike Brever. I really want to thank you for spending this last half hour with me. I hope you had a great time. I know I did. Until next week, I say please be safe, be smart, and be patient. You know, we just had that wonderful Cinco de Mayo social. Things are opening up a little at a time, and soon we will all be together again to enjoy that wonderful East Castle Place hospitality. Thanks again for letting me come into your homes, and I'll see you next week. So long, everybody.
Chairs in your parlor seem empty and bare. Do you gaze at your doorstep and picture